Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on the Cerebral Cricketer Podcast. Today, we're very, very special guests on the show. We have Shane Jurgensen, who's an Australian coach known for his elite fast bowling work across international and domestic cricket. He has held major roles with New Zealand cricket as bowling coach across multiple stints and previously coached Bangladesh as a bowling coach, then head coach, alongside roles in the global game, including Wellington Firebirds and recently head coach of Northern Territory Strike. So, as a player, Shane was a right arm fast medium bowler who has played Australian domestic cricket for Western Australia, Tasmania, and Queensland. So, welcome to the show, Shane. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate your time. I think I was really looking forward to this podcast because, as I was telling you before the show started, like me being born and bred Australian, but on top of that, I'm of Bangladeshi background. So I follow a lot of Bangladesh cricket and Australian cricket. So I was following Bangladesh cricket when you were actually the coach then. So it's really cool, like that kind of overlap in that sense to get your sort of experience and pick your brains. So maybe just to kick it off, like obviously you were a professional cricketer, so and you grew up in Queensland. So tell us what life was like growing up in Queensland.
Yeah, I had a pretty good upbringing in regards to my family in terms of my life was cricket. Brought up northern suburbs of Brisbane, excuse me, and so I played numerous sports growing up: Australian rules football, basketball. After I think I broke a leg, but it wasn't it was more like a chip of the one of the bones more than anything. And then I basically just stuck with cricket. And then I had a serious injury playing basketball, which was really bad. And then I just kept playing cricket. And cricket's been part of my life ever since I was a little kid, bowling in the backyard. And very similar to what my son's doing with me now, my youngest son, and he's doing that with me now. So I brought up, I was brought up around cricket. So my father used to play when I was young, and I used to watch him play a little bit. And then, I quickly sort of grew through the ranks and made representative teams and played first grade. I think when I was quite young, I was 16 years of age and had a fantastic opportunity and did well in my third game. I think I got 7 wickets in my third game against Eastern Suburbs in Brisbane, and then that sort of catapulted me to stay there since. And it was pretty cool upbringing around cricket, really.
Yeah, it's amazing, especially what you mentioned in regards to playing first grade from a young age. And what do you feel like was the key reason why you accelerated so quickly into the grade system from a young age? Like, is it because of maybe you had a coach that guided you through the way, or maybe you picked up the fundamentals, or maybe you worked really hard from a young age?
I bowled a lot when I was young. You would see me if you were in Brackenridge in Brisbane and you drove past McPherson Park, which is actually ironically where I played my first ever real game of cricket when I was in under 10s and I was 7 years of age, I think. And then in my teenage years, I was bowling there probably 3 or 4 times a week, trying to hit top of off stump a lot. I think, I had a lot of support growing up in terms of opportunity, which I was very blessed to have that opportunity. And I think for me, I had some fantastic coaching as well. I had a number of junior coaches that helped me, from Toot Byron, who is still a mentor today, lives in Ocean Shores on northern New South Wales, and I still contact him. Not every week or every month, but every few months, I just drop him a text or give him a call and still check in with him on coaching. And I think for me, he certainly helped me through my youth system when I made the Queensland under 17s and under 19s, and he was a huge support for me. And also another club stalwart, Ken Dixon at Sandgate Redcliffe District Cricket Club, who's still probably there every Saturday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, pulling the covers off for the game there. And he used to help me a lot. Early morning sessions before school, before he had to go to work and jump on the train to go to work, he'd help me. I remember one particular session, he helped me with my no balls. And the way that he helped me sort of fix up my no balls, I use a little bit of that today.
That's amazing. So, in terms of, you said in reference to your mentor, what specific aspects it could be in regards to the psychological side to cricket, or even the strategic side to cricket, that you feel like instilled in you that allows you to be the best coach you can be, or the best player when you were playing?
Yeah, I think for me, another gentleman that I missed out on that was a huge influence as well. It was Dennis Lilly. So Dennis Lilly, fantastic fast bowler in the 70s and 80s, and for Australia. And he used to go around and to all the parts of Australia. And if you were sort of identified in your state as an up and coming fast bowler, he would come along and we would have maybe a 2 or 3 day training camp. And he was fantastic in terms of um, not so much around technique, but he would come in and really describe how to set a field, how to take wickets, what's the mindset. So he was really good around that. My mentor, Toot Byron, came from a different, more of a life skills and life perspective. And when I broke my arm really badly in basketball, I basically, I am the reason why you should not hang on the ring when you slam dunk a ball. And I basically broke this arm really badly. And I woke up and he was the first person I actually saw when I came out of the operation. And I think having that type of mentor in your, teenage years, along with your parents, is really crucial. And I think, yeah, those mentors for me, they help me with a mix of how to play cricket, what's the mindset, the Australian way, I suppose, to be aggressive, take wickets, look to bowl bouncers. How do you get the batter out? What's the mode of dismissal? And as I said, a lot of those things took me through it in my own playing career, and have, I think those are pretty good foundations as a fast bowler in the modern game.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of, I know you just touched on like the more psychological side and being aggressive, but in terms of the technical aspects from a young age, like what did you also focus on the most? Was it like wrist position, seam presentation, or something entirely different?
Yeah, I think for me, my advantage, I think as a teenage bowler, and why I played first grade at a young age, was purely my height. I'm 6'3", used to get, bowl bouncy outswingers. And I probably wasn't really accurate, but I think I used to be a real wicket taker, and I think that's what you're judged upon as a fast bowler. Your role might change. My role changed throughout the years. In my professional years, I became more of an into the wind bowler. But I think as a teenager, some of the drills that I used to do was, well, basically try and bowl as accurately as I can. Might be off a half run up, might be a 3/4 run up. I think, and just be really relentless in bowling off stump, and even measure it. So how many times did I hit off stump? Was it 5 out of 6 times? I bowled 48 balls. Did I do it 40 times out of 48? And that's your starting point. You have to be accurate to be able to control your length. And I think for me, that, along with I used to have a lot of issues with my wrist position. So I used to sort of push the ball down leg side way too often. And that can come about because I'm trying to bowl fast. I'm a young fast bowler. I want to bowl quick as I can. And sometimes my wrist would break. But, coaching today and what I do, a few little sort of triggers, because everyone's different. So as a coach, you've got to find out different ways and how people hold the ball. So one thing is, for me, is I like to have a bit of a straight line between the elbow and this knuckle here. So if that's actually kinked like that, you can be as accurate as you want. But if that wrist is kinked like that, you're most likely going to be pushing into the right-handed batter. So, to be a little bit more behind the ball, trying to have a bit of a straight line between there and there. Another way you can do is bring this thumb back and this arm. So if you're holding a ball here, I don't have a ball here to suggest, but that finger back, I should say, can bring that wrist in a good position, and also with a thumb position if that thumb's pointing towards the slips. So that's 3 different ways straight away in terms of you can focus on wrist position. And I think a young fast bowler, you cannot underestimate how much practice you can do on your run up. I think having rhythm is really crucial, and being consistent, because you want to be able to get to the crease, building up your speed, but know that you're not going to know ball to start with, which is, you don't want to be holding yourself back. And 2, realizing that I've got to build up speed, and then enough speed to get through the action and then get to the release position and be able to bowl the ball powerfully. So run up is really crucial around that aspect.
In regards to you mentioned your height as well, and from playing from a young age, usually you start off playing on synthetic pitches, and then maybe when you get to grade, you're playing more on turf wickets that don't bounce as much. So, have
Mm.
you had that situation where you felt like, how you're saying that you wanted to target the top of off, that transition from like syntho to grade cricket might have made your sort of bowling, you had to like essentially adjust your bowling because of those kind of different wickets that you might have had to bowl on.
Oh, definitely. I think the for me, I mean, it's a long time ago. I'm 50 this year, so I haven't played a game of cricket since I was 31. But I played a decent level when I was young. So even before my first grade debut, I remember I was 13. I think I played fifth grade at 12. 13, I think I might have played third grade. And the thing that I've sort of picked up on really quickly, the difference between artificial, you always got bounce. It was always consistent, I should say. But when I moved into grass pitches, I always felt the grass pitch at that level always offered quite a bit. It might be a bit slow off the wicket, but I I sort of realised that the grassy wicket on particularly those grades, it actually offered quite a bit of sideways movement. So I think that was a bit of the trade off. I think a key person in any fast bowler's um, life is actually the keeper because, and I really relied on a lot of my keepers over the years to say to me, what's the ball coming through like? And it was a bit of a tough bit of feedback when the wicketkeeper goes, "Oh, it's a bit slow," and it's like, and then it took me a while to realise it actually wasn't me; it was the actual wicket. And I think that's probably the difference is if you can understand that earlier, the tactical and the strategy of grass wickets, yeah, that can always help. And the wicketkeeper's key.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of, you mentioned accuracy, what suggestions do you have when it comes to helping a bowler, be accurate? Because it would be down to like the volume of bowling that you do. Would it be down to being fully focused or like being mentally clear and present in the moment when you're bowling in? Because I'm not necessarily a bowler, but I can suspect that sometimes if a bowler is looking to bowl accurate, that might put pressure on them to bowl accurate, and then they're not able to maybe deliver, as opposed to feeling like they're not overthinking it and feeling free and being in that flow state and bowling. But then you have that volume of work that you can go back to trust your game to be able to be accurate. So, like, what would you say goes behind being an accurate bowler?
I think the first part is and rhythm, the run up, and I think I've already mentioned this, but there's three keys for a run up for me has always been jog on the spot or small steps at the start, not having a big momentum into a mark, just sort of be one, two, maybe three steps back behind the mark and put your toes on the mark at the top of your run up. So rhythm, pumping your arms, making sure you got your elbows pumping and you're leaning and you got a slight lean forward. And you want to try and that creates that natural rhythmical run up until you take off into the action. There's a couple of things that you can do. Because I'm tall, I could never look at a spot on the pitch because I run in. I'm taller, and I found my head was just moving too much. I wasn't the most athletic bowler, so it was what I tended to do. So you can look at a spot on the pitch if you want. I think it's when you're practicing and you don't have a batter, having a marker on the pitch or a flat device is for a way to land the ball on, not so much aim it, but just to get a feel for the length that you're bowling. The other thing that is really important, I found, is also just looking at top of off stump. And the third opportunity or the third thing, because I said everyone's different, and this is something that I've trialed with a number of the black cap bowlers is, and when we used to play, like as I said a long time ago, on Allan Border Field in Brisbane is quite a flat wicket, really bowl a bit of a flat wicket to bowl on for the bowlers, good for the batters. And one of the things that we used to talk about, and that we're talking about like late 90s, early 2000s, was get the ball through to the keeper and actually have a target being the keeper's gloves. And I came across this study in America around people that did shuttles, and when they looked further afield, not so much the line they got to go to. There was one group who looked at the line that they go to, like the suicide runs in basketball, but then they had people that looked up and only really looked at the line at the last second. They ran 25% quicker. It was some study that I picked up on because I'm curious, listen to podcasts and might have read it, I can't remember. So I did this when I was coaching, and as I said, it was something that we used to focus on a lot on the flat wickets, was get the ball through to the keeper and focus on the keeper's gloves. Never had speed cameras a lot back then, but I trialled it once with Kyle Jamieson when he was representing New Zealand, and the change was actually quite remarkable in terms of the ball speed. He went from being, in just this one game, mid 130s to bowling high 130s and bowled a few balls over 140 kilometres an hour. And literally we just focused and worked on it in the lead up to that game. So that might be something that you can do to actually, and what I do that in the nets is I actually put, I don't have anything here, but a black strap. It might be like a watch strap, obviously not a watch, but something like this, and actually put it just to the side of the stumps of off stump and maybe just above it. So it's actually sort of mirroring the keeper's glove. So that might be a little way, if you're in the nets by yourself and you got no batters around, or even when the batters are there, is just something to actually bowl through to.
So do you feel that the reason for that increase of pace, you gave the example of Kyle Jamieson, is because the pressure is not on the stumps or the person himself? It's more just focusing something externally that puts the pressure away from you feeling like you're having to bowl fast or you have to bowl accurate. You sort of, and it's kind of relational in a sense, like if you get the keeper involved, you feel like you can kind of communicate with them as well. And that focus, I guess that energy gets reoriented in that way that allows you to maybe perhaps, be present in the moment and be able to bowl faster without putting pressure on yourself to bowl fast or bowl accurately.
Well, I think when you're bowling, one of my sayings is something creates something. So your run up creates rhythm. Your rhythm in your run up and the way that you run in creates what your action is going to be like. And when your action is good and you're over the top of your feet, you're not falling away, you're nice and tall at the crease, then the next stage, that creates more efficiency and consistency of the release and power. With balance is power. And I think when something creates something, if you flip it the other way, you actually can't focus too much on technique, particularly in the heat of battle. Because if you're actually focusing on technique a lot, you're actually, in theory, potentially slowing down. And everything slows down because I'm worrying about my front arm or I'm worrying about this, but you've got so many other parts to bowling. And I think that it's amazing the power between the mind and the body. If you put a goal into what you want to achieve, and this is, I want to get the ball through the keeper, it's amazing how the body can actually just channel its energy into delivering that delivery. And that's actually one of the things that when I work with spinners is basically, what do you want to do before you bowl the ball, and what do you want to do? What do you want to see the ball do at the other end? So when I work with spinners, it's almost like visualize to see what the ball you want to do. Is a leg spinner. You want to land it on off stump, just outside off, and rip it past the batter's bat, hopefully taking the edge and getting the keeper's gloves. And I think, as I said, there's a lot of power in trusting what the body can do through visualization and just seeing what you want to try and achieve.
Amazing insights. And regarding your point about the spinners as well, you mentioned that you get the spinner to essentially reflect on what they want the ball to do and what will happen after. What goes into, because there's two parts to it, right? It's like, okay, I want to see this happen in this way to the ball, or I want to deliver this kind of ball. But then there's also a step before that where it's like, okay, they've come to a decision that they want to bowl like this, right? So what influences do you have to factor in order to come to the decision of wanting to bowl a certain way? Is it like, for example, the conditions, the bowler, like what aspects of the psychological side do you kind of hone in on a bowler to make or back them to make a certain decision to be able to, be like, okay, I want to bowl like this?
I think a lot of it comes back down to practice and the way that you practice. And if you're consistently practicing in a certain method, that's really crucial. And it's huge because when you practice, so much can be caught up in technique when reality, there's so much more to bowling than just technique. And I sort of say there's two things about technique. There's technique in terms of the MCC coaching manual that's been around for 100 years, the basics of bowling, just to basically deliver the ball or hit the ball. Then there's some what I call technique in relation to tactics. So I want to bowl wider of the crease. So what is my technique when I bowl wider of the crease? Since usually there's things like what have I got to make sure I focus on in my action without confusing it too much. So, for example, when I'm training it, when I'm bowled wide of the crease, a lot of bowlers get used to the stumps and where they're positioned, and it's all muscle memory. Then once they start practicing coming wide of the crease, it actually feels like I'm changing so much, when really you're not. It's just the peripheral vision, what you see, what you're used to all the time. So that's where I bring in the technique in relation to tactics and how you want to execute different deliveries. And there's little subtle things that you want to be aware of before you bowl the ball. So it's like a common thing for when guys bowl from wider of the crease is that because they're coming from wider, they're angling in, and basically what happens is the front shoulder or the front arm for a fast bowler can drop away really quickly, naturally, because it's not used to it. So one of the things that is a common theme is that when you bowl from wider on the crease, is making sure that your front arm is actually delayed and holding just a little bit longer in your action, just so everything can actually just get through the action. Because there's a tendency, again, muscle memory, the stumps are not there, I'm in a foreign place, I'm not used to it. That's a really good thing. I think around practicing is making sure you've got all the bases covered, field placements, you're training that. Excuse me. I think that's really underrated, because all of a sudden you're at the top of your mark and you go, oh, what's my field? The captain comes over and goes, what's your field? And it's like, it's really underrated. So practicing that's really huge. And a little tip around training, whether you're a spinner or a fast bowler, it actually doesn't matter. Having specific sessions every now and then where you're actually separating yourself from everyone else. And I used to do this when I was with the bowling coach for the Black Caps. If we had a new bowler come in, I would say to him towards the back end of the session, I would go, okay, there's 40,000 people here tomorrow. You're playing. We can't mirror that. You'll never mirror that, or you'll never be able to simulate that really. But what you can practice is what happens between deliveries. So you bowl the ball, it gets hit for four, or it goes past the bat, spins past the bat, and then quickly you've got to make the decision. You've got to walk back, past the stumps, past the umpire, and then you've got to go, am I bowling the same ball? Was that the right plan? Did I execute? Do I need to change a field? And that 25 seconds that a fast bowler takes to go back and then turn around and go, right, bowl, is something that's not really trained. And I did this once with Tim Southey when he hadn't played a lot for the New Zealand team way back in 2009, I think it was. There was a series against Australia, and it was the game that some people might remember when Brendan McCullum started playing the scoop over his head against Sean Tate. And that went down to a super over, and Tim bowled the last over and he bowled the super over, and we won the game. And it might have been my coaching, it might not have been, but I think for me, it was that simulation of practicing of what could possibly happen in that situation, and how's my mindset to get around that in that scenario. And actually practicing that is very underrated.
And how would you feel like in terms of, like, for example, you're mentioning coaching like the New Zealand bowlers as well? Have you felt that because you're giving a sort of template to follow, but then everyone is obviously different, or the way what that makes them tick? Like, for example, maybe someone gets hit for a four, that makes a certain bowler angry, and they sort of have a bit of extra steam in their bowling, as opposed to someone else, maybe they lose confidence and feel like maybe they bowl a bit slower. So do you find that that's common where everyone is sort of different, or maybe similar in the sense that because they play international cricket, they have a certain archetype or personality type that allows them to, for example, like they have to feel like they have to get angry, but then their concern is more to control it in order to get the best version of themselves, as opposed to maybe you're less likely to see someone that loses confidence because you need a certain, I guess, confidence level to be able to play, get to international cricket, if that makes sense. So like, how has that job been when it comes to coaching, that, you've seen different bowlers have different things that makes them tick and not tick, and how have you adjusted accordingly?
I think the first point was you always sort of draw upon what you used to be like when you're a bowler. So, and then when I played professional cricket myself, I was very lucky. I played, and it sort of set me up for my coaching. I played for 3 states in Australia. So I had, West Australia, I had some amazing players. And again, names like Damien Martin, Justin Langer, Mike Hussey, Brendan Julian. Then I moved to Tasmania, and there was different players there again. Some seriously amazing batters that I faced against every Michael Divenuto, Jamie Cox, Shane Watson moved there when I was roughly there, and then back to Queensland. That was an amazing bowling attack, and I was like the 12th bowler back, and then there was a whole pile of injuries, and then just being in those training environments was huge. So that set me up for my coaching and different coaches, and then it all sort of stews up, and then it sort of comes out of you. And what I learnt is that in club cricket for myself, I used to be really angry. I used to get hit for 4 or 6, and I'd come down, I'd be really, get angry at the batter. But when I played first class cricket, it didn't work at all. Like, did not work. It made me. I was, I'd bowl a bouncer, and usually the next ball after a bouncer has to be really good. Otherwise, the bouncer has no impact, because the bouncer is there to complement your length bowling. And I found, for me, what worked for me is that when the batter hit me for 4 or 6, I'd actually go down and say, "Great shot, mate." And a couple of batters would say, "What?" It's just like, "Great shot," because what it did, it made me stay calm. I still played it. I have a saying that I use for my players sometimes: stay calm, play savage. And I think I got that off, I would have got it off somewhere, and we're coaching in America. And I thought the cricket, that's really relevant, because you need to stay calm, because every ball's an event. So you've got to come back. You get hit for 4 or 6, and it's like, well, you can have an impact the next ball. So you need to get yourself together and go, right, if I take a wicket in this T20, I'm playing T20 and a bowler, you just got to suck it up. You might go for 4 boundaries and over, if not more, and have it. But the next ball, if you take a wicket, you can change the game. So I think for me is understanding that every bowler is different. But if I was really honest, I think a lot of the fast bowlers over the years that I've worked with, there's a certain level of aggression. There has to be, because you're starting the game of cricket, and you got the opportunity as the bowler to really have a presence with the ball. And there's also a lot of pressure in terms of execution. So I think if you're looking to survive, that's when you're in trouble. But if you're looking to be aggressive, look to take wickets, have a presence out there, and realize the next ball that you can have an impact, and you've got the skill and you belong, it takes a long way for you to be able to do that. So, and as I said, every bowler is different. There's been some crazy bowlers I've faced over the years. I remember even batting, I think it was Stuart Clark, and he was bowling for New South Wales, and I was at the non-striker, and I'm just like playing my, 3rd or 4th game, and he's like abusing me as he's walking past and giving me some words, and I'm like going, whoa, I haven't even faced a ball yet. So yeah, he was like that. And then you'd have people like Andy Bickle that would not say a thing, like would come in and bowl fast outswingers and go through your bat, past your bat, and he'd just turn around and walk back to his mark. Or he might laugh at you and smile. So and Michael Kasparovich, another name, wouldn't say a thing. Like literally didn't say a thing to you. But still had an impact with the ball, because he bowled really good bouncy outswingers and obviously played for Australia. Brett Lee, when he was young, he was a bit like what Stuart Clark did to me. One day he did that to me, but then when I played him later in his career, and when he had already set the platform of how good he was going to be, and he was a different bowler. He just let the ball do the talking.
Yeah, like speaking of Brett Lee, I might actually jump to when you played for Australia under 19. So when you got the call up for that, how was that experience? Because you played against India, and on top of that, you just mentioned Brett Lee. You also played alongside Brett Lee in the, I think it was the Test match of the youth Test match, and on top of that, which is an interesting fun fact, you played alongside Clinton Peake, who's the father of Melbourne Renegades Australian under 19s captain Oliver Peake, who's literally playing in the World Cup right now. So yeah, like that must have been quite a memorable experience for yourself, knowing or finding out that you're going to play for the Australian under 19 team as well, and then you also got the likes of playing alongside the likes of Brett Lee as well.
Yeah, I think for me, playing for the Australian under-19s was huge. Uh, yeah, I think I did struggle a little bit at first to understand what I was getting myself into, like representing Australia. Like it was like, wow, this is something I've wanted ever since I was a child, obviously, and wanted to play for Australia. And again, it was a long time ago now, but yeah, a whole mixture of uh, I can't wait to play for Australia. I can't wait to put the cap on. And also, I'm also going, am I worthy of this? And then when we come into camp, you've got so many good cricketers around you that all of a sudden the whole landscape changes. Because I remember, particularly in the home series, I went to India initially, and then came back from that tour early with back injury, and then went. We had the next summer. We had the series against India and Australia, and I think I didn't play the first few games in the one days, I think, and I was wondering what's going on, and then I ended up playing at the end, and that was really cool. So yeah, some amazing players I played with, and Brett Lee was certainly a very, very fast bowler, a lot faster than me.
And do you remember taking a seven-fer in the youth test in Sydney versus India?
Yeah, you remind me of that. I've actually forgotten about that. Yeah, Drummoyne Oval, I think it was that. Yeah, so that was really cool. I think we played against VVS Laxman. I think he was in that team. I think the year before in India he played. We played a warm up game in Hyderabad, I think, and he was playing. But some very good cricketers, and yeah, he sort of. I look back now and I see some photos sometimes of some of the people, and still contact a few of them now. Particularly the guys. I've got a WhatsApp group with the players that I went to the cricket academy with in 1994, and I was the baby, and everyone was older, way older. And I was just out of school really, so I was still learning how to be a human being, and cricket was just learn how to play cricket, and some serious names there in that squad of people. But yeah, that was a really cool experience representing Australia in the under-19s.
Now, I might fast track to when you played in the Sheffield Shield, and it's the 2001 to 2 Pura Cup final, and you'd actually taken 11 wickets in the final for Tasmania against Queensland, which is an incredible feat. But unfortunately, you didn't get the win for Tasmania, so that must have been a lot of mixed emotions. Like you probably bowled your heart out. Took 5 for 68 in the first innings, 6 for 104 altogether, 11 for 172. It's incredible in a final, and then it didn't end up losing the game. So I ended up winning the game. So what was it like in the lead up to the game? What sort of, how did you prepare for that game? And I guess after the game, how did you feel with that kind of loss, even though you did really well?
I think I remember in that game that there was someone that was in the crowd, and him and I still actually end up speaking together a lot after it. And he was actually saying, if you probably said it now in a game, it'd probably be what you would call completely inappropriate. And he apologized later on. We actually became friends. And I remember him yelling out, and that was very getting into me a little bit. But for me, playing against Queensland, where I was brought up, representing Tasmania, had given me an amazing opportunity. I think what I remember in the game is that we actually had a whole pile of injuries. And I think I bowled 69 overs over 5 days. And when I tell some of my players that, I did okay in one game, and 11 for 170, I think it was, off 69 overs. And when they said, "You what? You bowled 69 overs in one game?" And I said, "Well, yeah, because our spinner, Dan Marsh, he dropped a catch off me, or he might have caught a catch and actually pulled a ligament in his left knee. So he struggled to bowl. Jared Denton, I think, had a toe infection and was in a lot of pain. David Saker, basically him and me were the only other two fit bowlers. Damien Wright, he'd torn a quad leading into the game and had some specialist treatment, but he bowled most of the game still, but was definitely not helping. Like he had a lot of pain and bowled through it. Yeah, so basically I had to bowl a lot, and I bowled up the hill into the wind. And I remember jumping out of a sand pit at one end of the Gabba. The pitch is actually at one end. I don't know if it is what it is like now, but you used to have to jump off the ground and onto the pitch. It was separated compared to the other end was a lot smoother. So I remember I had my big size 14s had certainly worn a hole in the sand pit, and yeah, it was a special game and phenomenal. To be involved in that match. It was playing a final is always cool. So that's what I remember most.
Yeah, that's incredible. And actually, speaking of bowling 69 overs, I'm curious because there's a lot of conversation, especially in this day and age, about modern cricketers and bowlers not bowling enough. And then you're seeing or hearing about a lot of these bowlers, pace bowlers in particular, getting all these sort of injuries. And many, I guess, old school cricketers always make a point that it's more because of them not bowling enough, like people talk about Jofra Archer, for example, or Mark Wood, as opposed to maybe they make the comparison to examples from before, like, I don't know, for example, Brett Lee or Mitch Johnson or whoever. They used to bowl, like they used to play literally every single test match, but now we're talking about workloads and shifting plays. And a bit of a funny story, because you mentioned Stuart Clark and maybe the abuse that he gave you. It's a really random story, but when I was in Sydney, I sometimes train at Norm O'Neill Cricket Centre, and I bumped into Stuart Clark because I think he goes there from time to time because I think his son trains there. So like, it was just so funny. Like I had a quick chat to him about literally the same conversation. Like, what do you think of bowlers nowadays? They people talk about them not bowling enough, and that's what he was basically saying as well. Like, yeah, they're not bowling enough, therefore that's why they're getting injured. But I recall Wasim Akram in an interview saying a similar thing. So what's your thoughts around that? Because you obviously taking the case study of yourself bowling 69 overs. Did you already feel like you had that aptitude, or that you're already built in a way where you knew that you can bowl 69 overs because you've done all the training and hard work, or was it something you had to sort of battle through? I'm just curious about what you think about that and how you yourself were able to bowl those 69 overs.
Yeah, I think for me, that was a period of time when I was probably my fittest. I think I was 26, 27 when that happened. I would have bowled a lot of overs when I was young. I also had good conditioning. I was probably still not as strong as what I was maybe a couple of years later, but in terms of physical bowling peak, I was fine. I think where the information goes wrong these days around bowling loading, and my role with the New Zealand Black Caps is I used to monitor so I used to run the bowling loading sort of system for the whole country. So I was the Black Caps bowling coach, and I set up a system where we have our athlete management system, but then we had these spreadsheets that I sort of used to run and make sure everything was there. So I would get a phone call from the national selector saying, we're thinking about picking this bowler. Can you see what his bowling loading's done? Has he done the work leading up to a test match? Because basically leading up to a test match, if you haven't consistently bowled somewhere within a range of around 30% of what you would bowl in a test match, you're probably going to struggle to get through the test match without injuring yourself either in that game or maybe up to 3 weeks later. So for me, what I learned though is if you can try and be consistent is really important in how much you bowl. That those guys that are consistently bowling day in and day, not day in, day out, but you're bowling 3 times a week, sometimes 4 if you have to, and you're bowling 10 months a year, you'll generally be pretty injury free. And that's what people like dropping names, don't mean to name drop, but people like Tim Southey, Neil Wagner, Trent Bolt, they rarely got injured. Like, seriously, I think I got injured like each of them once during my last 8 years of the Black Caps. And that was a combination of fitness, strength, and bowling, and knowing that they got to do the bowling leading into a test series. I think you can't really compare, though, when I played to now. You actually can't. If you play club cricket every week and you bowl twice a week and you play club cricket on Saturday, and as long as you're keeping your overs consistent, you'll get strong just from bowling because you have those days or two break. Because bowling's a physically powerful activity. Like, if I go and bowl now, I'll probably last 8 balls and I'll be like puffing. I'll get like lactic acid build up. So that's why you got to build up the resistance over a period of time. But I think you can't compare when I bowl, because I literally played 4-day cricket, bit of club cricket. But now, international players, the frequency is huge. Like, one days, test matches, T20s. It's literally impossible to play all three formats. And then they play franchise cricket. I think, and the big challenge for international cricket I identified was going from T20 cricket, where you bowl 4 overs, high intensity, plus warm ups, and all of a sudden the 2 weeks later you're playing a test match. And I found that incredibly hard. We used to do as much bowling as we could in warm ups in between games, but it's very hard to mirror a test match anywhere near it when you've got to bowl 20 overs a day. So I think, yeah, it's a combination of being as fit as you can, as strong as you can, as flexible as you can. And for a young fast bowler, just try and be as consistent as you can in the overs that you bowl each week, and try and limit what we call spikes, peaks, and troughs. So you don't want to bowl like 12 overs one week, and the next week you bowl 35. And then the next week you bowl 15 again, and then you bowl 35. Because generally what will happen with lack of consistency, that's when things start to go wrong.
Oh, those were incredible insights. A lot to actually unpack. I wanted to first ask you about, like you mentioned, the New Zealand bowlers, they barely ever got injured. And you also said that's the reason being, the consistency or the strength. And when you talk about strength, what are you referring to? Are you talking about like just the weight training that goes into building a strength in a bowler? Like, what exactly does strength look like in a bowler?
Yeah, good. I think to start with, a bowler is the first thing you do is you run, and then you jump and you land, and leg strength is crucial. I think, I remember Tim and Trent and Wags, they used to squat 180 to 200 kilos. Like in their prime, I think it was around that. Might be more, might be a bit less, but I don't remember the numbers now, but some really good numbers in terms of, like, it's over nearly double their body weight. So, because when you land, you're putting 7 to 10 times your body weight through your back foot landing to start with, and you've got to try and keep that leg as straight as you can. Don't want to sink into it too much. And I think, leg strength, different types of strength. So you're actually controlling the landing. I think for me, I'm no S&C guru at all, but I think that's a really good starting point. Making sure your legs are strong, glutes, quads, hamstrings, lower back. You got to have really good core control. I think for me, those Swiss balls, the big Swiss ball, I used that when I had back issues in my early 20s, that was gold for me. I used to do all my weight training laying down it, doing bench press, even just sitting on it when I was at home doing homework. I just, any young fast bowler, I would just used to go home and just sit on the big Swiss ball or fit ball, they're called, and do my homework and sit on it, do some exercise on it, having really good control and flexibility. There's a combination of everything, and then a combination of, I think that's quite a good thing for young fast bowlers, I think, is actually learning how to sprint, the technique of sprinting. And there's a number of drills that, go to again, you can look at all this online now. It's so different compared to when I used to play, when you used to try and have to ask questions, even going. I remember one year in England, I think I went and saw it. I used to go to a gym that had a running track around it, and I saw a guy doing long jump once, and I walked out, and I think I said, "Can you teach me how to run, or have you got any suggestions on how to have a run up and when you're doing the long jump?" But again, now it's there's so much information out there, and I think the challenge is trying to filter it all and trying to simplify it rather than trying to find out new things, the way to do things. I still think there's traditional ways that are really important to do things. It doesn't really change much. There might be some gimmicky little thing here and there that might give you a little bit, but in the end, you still got to do the real core foundations. And I think even as a fast bowler, like we do specific prehab drills before every time the guys bowl, which involve the therabands. That might be a twist, it might be over the head, medicine ball slams. If you do that before every time you bowl, there's a huge relationship between, again, the body and the mind, setting yourself up to bowl. And that's sort of something that we do with all young fast bowlers in our programs.
And on top of that, a case study being Bangladesh. I don't know if you coach I'm pretty sure Mustafiz wasn't playing for Bangladesh at the time you were coaching, but someone like him, for example, like many bowlers we may be observing for watchers of cricket, they see they may be a lot more skinnier, maybe not as built in the way that you're talking about. Maybe I don't know, Trent Bolt is, and them doing those heavy squats. Have you seen those case studies where this bowler is able to bowl, good speeds like 135, 140, but they're not necessarily the strongest, or can squat heavy, but maybe they have natural fast twitch fibers. Like, how do you go about, if you do happen to see such a bowler, how do you go about coaching them and building that strength up? Or do you even focus on that, or don't you focus on that because of maybe they naturally have fast twitch fibers that doesn't require you to work on that strength as much as you need?
I think for me, it's just identifying in the bowling action. I think it's crucial. There's been some new ways about how to bowl the ball, how to bowl fast. I still think there's the real key areas: a strong back foot landing. Uh, and there are other drills that you can do. I mean, I call them bowl holds that you can do before you bowl to sort of trigger the muscles in those. And I think for a young fast bowler in your teens, that type of is fine. Body weight exercises is fine. I think, young fast it just purely comes down to if their bowling action is going to be dangerous or not. And I think that's a really your first point of call is always, is the action dangerous? And if it's dangerous, where is it dangerous? And usually a lot of fast bowlers, particularly in New Zealand, is because in New Zealand you can't train out. Like, for an example, now it's pouring outside, and then that'll affect club cricket on the weekend, and sometimes games get moved to artificial wickets, believe it or not, during the summer. Then we have a very cold winter, so we don't get to train outdoors a lot. So then what happens is guys train indoors a lot, and we do have facilities now, that a lot more facilities to be able to train on grass all year round, but that's only for the professionals. If you're under 15 fast bowler, you'll go indoors, and then you usually have short run-ups. So when you have short run-ups, you find ways to bowl fast, and usually that involves twisting the body too much, counter rotation, trying to bowl faster. And with that rotation, the action takes longer. You sink into your back leg more, and you have, instead of having a straight leg, which I've mentioned a few times, or pretty much a straight leg with a bit of flex, you tend to sink into the back leg, and then once you sink in the back leg, you'll fall away, and then that creates all these issues. And I think that's a starting point for me, is making sure the action's safe.
And in terms of injuries as well, I know I've watched an interview, I'm pretty sure it was Brett Lee, who talked about the fact that even when he felt that he was injured or he was hurt, he would still bowl through it. And I find that really interesting because now we hear, probably, I don't know if it's heightened more now in the sense that a lot of bowlers, pull out of games because of potential injuries or niggles. And I suspect a lot of players do, a lot of bowlers have niggles. But what, I guess, in your eyes, constitutes someone to actually have an injury where it's like, no, you can't play now? Because sometimes it can be very subjective in a sense, because it's about how, the player feels, right? Like, and I guess each person has a certain threshold, and some people might feel like they're injured, but they'll probably push themselves more because they want to play more games for their country or whoever, or for their state, as opposed to someone that's like a bit more maybe pessimistic in the mindset and is like, I don't want to make this worse, so I'm just gonna take a break now. So what actually is there like an objective measure, and how do you go about implementing that?
Yeah, I think that can be a bit of a tough one because there is definitely, as I've said previously, there's everyone's different. Pain thresholds can be different, and understanding. I currently coach Wellington. We've got some young fast bowlers, we've got some young players, and the difference between might be a cramp, is a pain, is that an actual injury? Young players are still learning what that difference is. I think one thing as a bowler, you will definitely always have pain. Uh, you'll always have something that might be just a little bit stiff and that's a little bit off. And I suppose that's why recovery is so important and recovery methods. Again, fast bowling is a powerful sport. You'll tend to get stronger in other parts. You'll get sore in other parts. And, basically trying to stretch all that out again and making sure everything's back aligned is really important. Um, but I think, you will always have some level of pain when you're a young fast bowler. I think, however, the higher the standard that you play, it's so crucial that you're able to execute what you can do. And I think that's probably the point of where you actually go, I can't bowl. And if you're running in and you're hobbling, or you're running in and there's an obvious difference in your anatomy, the way that you bowl, and you're running in, and you can't physically do that. Well, you're either injured or you're about to get injured, and I think that's the difference. I mean, you can probably hide little niggles a lot. You can hide them, and you can manage that through, if you're a little bit older and you're an adult, it might be some ibuprofen or other forms of, to try and get you through that day. I don't prescribe that at all, but sometimes that you have to, because it'll just help you get, as I said, help you get through that period that you need to get through. And then whatever damage, we cross fingers and hopefully later on it's good. It's just basically soreness. But I think if you cannot execute what you need to do, that's probably a good sign that you're about to get injured or you are injured.
Yeah, fair enough. And in terms of, I might actually jump to your stint when you were the New Zealand bowling coach in 2008 to 2010, because you had an interesting. I know you spoke about Trent Bolt and Tim Southey, who was still probably playing back then as well. But you're also working with bowlers such as Shane Bond, if I'm not mistaken, and
Yeah.
Carl Mills, and the likes of Jacob Oram as well through the middle overs. I was like a kid, and I'd like watching bowl those middle overs, especially in the Australian pitches. So those memories are pretty memorable for me. So in terms of also at that time, the spin leader and captain was Daniel Vettori. So how did you work with these paces? Was it more were the things that you're fixing up from a very technical perspective, or was it all about kind of coaching the tactical and the mindset aspect with these particular bowlers?
Yeah. Good question, mate. I think for me, back then, when I first joined the Black Caps, 2008, late 2008, I was only young. For a coach, I was 32. And another guy I used to work really closely with was Chris Martin, who was 35, and he's 3 4 years. I catch up with Chris every now and then. He was older than me. Bondi was older than me. Um, yeah, and I think Dan and I might be the same age. Yeah, but I think for me, what when I got some really good tips from a coach who I was living with at the time. He's a batting coach. He's from Australia, called Mark O'Neill. And one of the tips that Mark gave to me was, um, I'll give you a little prop here, was, always, my iPad is always take video. And that's one of the things that I used to do when I first joined, was I would, a lot of the time, video sessions. I used to do another thing that I used to pick up from a gentleman who unfortunately died when he was coaching Pakistan, Bob Woolmer, who I used to read about how he used to coach Alan Donald. And he would, time, another prop for you, time the run-ups from the starting point to the front foot slamming. And that sort of timing, I started doing that type of stuff. I started to gather information, and that's what I was doing. I I might have also come in and one or two players, I might have said to them, I remember saying something to Jacob Oram about his front arm and the impact that could have, and try and have a moment with a bowler when once you gain their trust, it's like, well, have you considered this? This is something I think is going to be really worthwhile. Um, but what I did was, as I said, I took a whole pile of video, and then when a bowler was bowling really well, I had the information on me. So I had video footage from games, had video footage from training, and then it also allowed me, when a bowler technically, because they do, when a bowler sort of starts to not become right, they'll make sure that their technique is not, they might not be falling away. There just might be a little angle here and there where there might be a little bit out. So that's where the video footage came in key. And then also information like at trainings, the intensity of training compared to intensity of game. So when I used to time the run up I used to be like 0.2 of a second out at training. So that gives you an idea, 0.2 of a second between training and a game when the adrenaline's pumping, and even around skills. So I found a lot of bowlers used to bowl slightly slower in their run up when they were going to bowl Yorkers. So, and you're talking 0.2 of a second slower. So I remember Trent Bolt's run up, it might have been like 2.9 seconds. It was 3.1 to 3.2 at training. And the Yorkers were probably about the same because it was all about balance at the crease and bowling the ball hard, as opposed to trying to, hit the length and change the trajectory. So I had a lot of video which helped. Daniel Vettori. So one of the great memories for me is I remember Dan said to me, he's sort of bowling a few no balls and getting a bit long. And I had video footage. So he came up to me and we had a bit of a break in between series and said, I want you to come and have a camp with me. And I went, a camp? What's this? Daniel Vettori, 500, 600 plus international wickets. I did get a wicket once bowling off spin in first grade, I think. And how am I going to coach him? So I went up to Auckland and we basically, again, started timing the run up, did a whole pile of video. We worked together for 2 days. We planned for 3. We fixed him up in 2 days, 2 sessions. And it just came back to when Dan wasn't bowling well, and I know it's going back to a technical thing, but the thing that happened is his stride lengths were too long and he was heel striking, not staying on his toes. So therefore, every step he would get longer to get momentum. When you're a heel striker, you will have longer bowling strides, trying to get speed. So he was actually trying to get speed up to the run up because he had quite an energetic run up, and then he would get too long and his bowling stride was too long. So we did a thing. He would have seen footage maybe in 2009, 2010 when he was actually like going bang, bang, bang. He was really deliberately trying to stay on these toes and not go too long. And so he's doing this prance almost. And but that seemed to help because, again, something creates something. So, that was phenomenal. Like, what a privilege, I'm sure a lot of people would love that opportunity. And I look back now, that was a really cool event. And I really enjoyed working with Dan because he was such a cool customer, had a fantastic way to deliver a message this exact same way, whether he gave you a hard message. And I got a hard message. He gave me some feedback once. And then when he delivered good messages, it was exactly the same. And he was, really privileged to have that opportunity to work with him on that particular bowling camp with him. And when he was in control of his run up, because again, he's taller than me, 6'4", when he's bowling arm, because he used to bowl from behind it. So when this angle was acute, he was very balanced through the action. But when this got long and his hand didn't go behind his head, he used to bowl the ball into the right-handers' pads a lot because he was long-levered, tall, and he would again just fall away. And I had the video footage in games. I had the video footage of training, so I could call upon it and talk to him about it if I felt that he was just sort of, because they play so much, eventually something starts to give way, and you just have that technical aspect where you can bring them back to the basics, but also execution, which is really crucial at bowling international level.
Incredible insight regarding Daniel Vettori. Regarding that point, you mentioned like when he's not bowling at his best. He was a heel striker, I think is the word you used, and then you just gave the example now with the hand position behind his head. What do you feel like goes behind or goes into the fact that he bowls that way in a certain period? Like you mentioned that, for example, in a certain time he bowls well and he does all these things well, and as opposed to when he's not bowling well, he's doing all these things that aren't allowing to bowl well. But what gets him to that position where he's not, like, heel striking? Like, is it more, I don't know, goes back to the psychological thing? Is it maybe, I don't know, like he's bowling in certain conditions where there's a bit more adjustment, maybe there's a lot of wind, and then he, I don't know, naturally gravitates towards being a heel striker, and therefore kind of it's like a domino effect when it comes to his hands or whatever. Like, what actually goes behind or sort of creates that situation that makes him become a heel striker in that certain match or certain period of time?
Yeah, I think to start with, when you're playing at that level and you play so often and it's high intensity, I think, it's, I've had situations that have been really scary. Like I remember one situation, I was catching balls at Eden Park number 2, and it was Australia versus New Zealand, I think it was. It was the halftime break, and we went and bowled on number 2, and the security didn't sort out the crowd. Next minute, I literally was catching balls here, and guys are bowling 135, 140. And literally, I remember one time I had to dive and stop it because I knew, and I turned around and it was a dad and his 8-year-old son, literally 10 meters behind me. So if that hit someone, it would have been quite painful. And I think the reason why it has a bit to do with what I'm saying is that people really don't understand the intensity that's required at that level, the adrenaline that's pumping, the pressure, the media, the crowd. It takes you to a level as a cricketer that you'll never experience at club cricket, and you just don't. Maybe if you're playing in a final, there's so many. Like I said to you with the bowling before, like the difference between training at high intensity and bowling at high intensity in a game was somewhere between zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.3 of a second in the run-up. So when you're operating at that high level, things will start to break down. It's like a car. You can't drive a car like full throttle all the time. Eventually, things will start to break mechanically. And I think it's the same thing. Like you might get a little bit sore here, you might get a little bit sore there. You try to get through that game, and all of a sudden, in an effort to get through that game, you play on different fields, different conditions. In New Zealand, we experience a lot of wind. And little habits start to creep in an effort to get the ball down there at high intensity. And that's why techniques basically break down. And then you just got to have a period of time when you go, okay, I need to just pull it back and make sure as a bowler, if I'm a bowler that naturally is nice and tight in here, I might be starting to get a bit long, and then I'm starting to fall away, or I'm not getting through the action. And literally all those bowlers, though, need to do is sometimes they just literally need to have one session where they focus on whatever that might be. I just want to be tight in here, and it sort of recalibrates the action back to where it used to be. And it literally just takes that one session. Sometimes it takes 6 balls, and it's like, yeah, I got the feel for it again. I'm just, as a spin bowler, I'm just pausing my front side, and I've got a little bit more time on the ball, and all of a sudden I can feel the ball come off my fingers. I've got it. There it is. And then they just need like, sometimes people need 2 balls. Some people might need a session, and they get the rhythm back, maybe another session, depending on what type of bowl they are. If they're a rhythm bowler, it might take a little bit longer, but it's amazing how quickly they can bring it back.
Yeah, I think those are incredible insights, and I think obviously, like me, like I just play like park grade cricket. Like we obviously, it's very interesting when you talk about the high intensity and what the player goes through, and not, it's not, you can't expect someone to be at full throttle 100% all the time, and so that kind of tinkering or that kind of going back to the basics and kind of finding that rhythm is super important, even for players that are playing at such high intensity in that sense. So I also wanted to jump to your period as Bangladesh's bowling coach in 2010 period onwards. And me being a Bangladeshi, fan and following the games, I was like, at that time, it was that kind of period where there was as a Bangladesh fan, we observed a change where we were winning more games because obviously, previously we probably weren't winning as many games as we'd like, but then during your tenure as well, you had established players like Tamim Iqbal, Shakib Al Hassan, even like likes of Mahmudullah, Momin ul Haq, and all these kind of players, and they started to slowly be that kind of bedrock of the team when it comes to batting. And on top of that, like there were bowling options that were coming into the fore, like Mashrafi Mortaza, Rubel Hussain, and we're already privy to the left arm orthodox spinners that are in Bangladesh cricket at the time. I think it was Abdul Razak as well, which was very established cricketer in that period. So when you kind of how actually before that, like how was it like going to Bangladesh? I can imagine how much of adjusting it would have been for yourself. Like I'm not sure if you'd probably been to the subcontinent in that sense or in that kind of capacity previously, because obviously you're playing in Australia and then you're coaching New Zealand. I'm sure maybe you did tours with New Zealand to the subcontinent, but in terms of actually going there, I'm sure you're living there and coaching there. What was that? Was it a big adjustment in that sense?
Yeah, certainly an adjustment. I will start with I was away from my family a lot, which is, I still do now. But I think for me, I'd just been to Bangladesh not long before that with the New Zealand team. And then 12 months later, we lost the series 4-0, I think. It was when I was with the New Zealand team. And then literally 12 months later, I'm the bowling coach for Bangladesh, thanks to Stuart Law, who was the coach at the time, and he got me to come over. And yeah, I think we made the final of the Asia Cup pretty quickly. There were certainly some tough matches in test matches initially when I got there. And I think, some of those players that, living there was definitely different, different periods of the year. It was hot, humid, my goodness. And then there was like 2 weeks of the year in January where it was actually cold and people had jerseys on. And I remember, I think I had to go and buy myself one. I didn't think it would get that cold. But I think, it was certainly a challenge living there. Like literally, going, literally, I think I had to go like 5 to 10 kilometers to training. And then sometime I'd have to leave at like 6:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning to beat the traffic. I think that was the big one. 10-kilometer drive would take 45 minutes to an hour and a half. Depending on the day of the week. So that was one adjustment as well. But I think the coaching was so memorable. All those players, like huge fond memories, some big egos at times, and some, like obviously like Shakib. I'm not saying it's Shakib, but Shakib was held in high esteem over there, like huge billboards of him and Tamim, and extremely popular. It was so cool to be around them. They were the rock stars of Bangladesh cricket at that time. I worked when I was coach closely with Mushfiqur Rahim. Mushi was at that time, was the perfect captain. And it was amazing for me when I became head coach. I think the big challenge for me was actually the language barrier. Some could speak really good English and understood, and then there was others that were, I had to basically come up with ways with my body language, pointing things out, doing this and run up and or get an interpreter. Might have been one of the local, my analyst that we had there, Nasu, who's still there. So I think, love my time there. Took over as head coach. My role there when I was head coach, after we had another coach come in, I was interim head coach. Another person came in as head coach for a few months, and then it was sort of a bit of a difficult ending, that one. And then all of a sudden I became head coach, and we just started playing well, winning. My role there was to just create a happy changing room. That was my role, just try and get rid of all the distractions. There was a lot of distractions at times, so trying to bring them back to going out and playing and having fun and enjoying each other's company and letting their natural talent and also their hard work. And they were very dedicated. They loved hitting a lot of balls, loved bowling a lot of balls. And then once we had some really good success, particularly in the longer version format, I think that's what we started to do. We started to draw test matches. We used to lose test matches probably a little bit too easily at times for various reasons. And then all of a sudden we started drawing test matches. We're playing more. We're playing longer version cricket. And then that just flowed on to the one dayers where we performed very well and had some good series wins against West Indies. I think it was. We beat New Zealand. Won a test match. I think it's the second test match ever overseas against Zimbabwe. And then, I think we drew a series or won a series in Sri Lanka. So I think, that there was some really cool things.
Yeah, and when you were the stint when you were a Bangladesh bowling coach, what sort of work were you doing with the pacers or even with the spinners as well? And yeah, who impressed you the most in that time period?
Yeah, some very talented bowlers. I think there's a couple of names I actually can't remember, to be honest with you, but Shafiul Islam, he was one. Shafiul Islam used to be able to swing the ball both ways. He was very lean and came from a very humble background, and he was amazing to work with. Rubel Hussain was another one. The other one that is the huge one that I used to love and get on with, and even now I'd see him, we'd hug each other, was Mashrafi Mortaza. What an inspirational man he is. 2 knee reconstructions, 2 ankles, serious operations. Used to run in and bowl with his knees basically strapped up, had protectors on them, ankle. We worked together on his comeback. That was really cool. So what we did, his run up used to be really long, and somehow I managed to get into him that we did a drill that I had been using, a specific run up drill to make sure that the bowler's run up is what he wants, is designed, and you go through a process of the technique of the run up. You go through trying to be consistent, and then you might do it with your eyes closed. There's a number of different ways that people can do it, but basically we shortened his run up by, I think it was like 3 or 4 meters. It used to be like 25 something. It was huge. He'd come near from the sight screen, and we just got to the point where it's like, well, you're not bowling 140 anymore. But he had some serious skill. Like when we did the seam release drill and I had the baseball mitt and he would bowl to me, he would say, okay, Shane, outswinger, in swinger. And he'd like, and I never knew, he never really bowled these balls in games, but later on he started to bowl it more because he shortened his run up, which prolonged his career. And then that allowed him to just bowl all these different deliveries. He had an off cutter. He had an off cutter that was slightly slower again. And then he had an off spinning slow ball. Then he had a knuckle, he was one of the few ones that started like a knuckleball. It was a deep hand, a slow ball, but he had all these deliveries, so skillful. And I really enjoyed working with him because he was so loved over there. So you had Tamim and Shakib, they were up there, but then you had Mashrafi Mortaza. He was the king. When he walked in, everyone stopped talking. He walked in a dressing room, he would embrace it. I don't know. Like other sports. Like he's like Shaquille O'Neal. Like Shaquille O'Neal would walk in. It's just the stature of the person, how tall he was. And Mashrafi was quite a tall. Tall. It wasn't like Shaquille O'Neal, but he just had a presence about him. And yeah, he was really cool to work with, and so relaxed at the same time. And he would get down when we lost, but he had little things like this. One thing I remember with him, we're in Ireland, and we went to a team dinner. Our team dinners was always interesting. Our team dinners used to be so quick because what would happen is that I never knew this would happen. We'd turn up and literally sat down, and all the food would start coming out. And I'm going, we literally just got here. I just want to order a soft drink or a water, if that's all right. And then literally the food starts coming out. They would all eat. And literally half an hour later, the captain would look at me and go, okay, Shane, it's time to go. I was like, geez, the food hasn't even just got in my mouth here. And I was just enjoying it, was talking to people. And then that's what used to happen. Like they would ring up before and order and then and time it. So we'd be there at 9 and then the food would come out at 9:01. So that was fun experiences. But yeah, I think yeah, and Mashri Mortaza, after a team dinner once, he was with me at the back of the bus, and he spoke to me, and I was actually in tears, um, not blubbering, but I was actually quite emotional. It was probably about him telling me the story. So he went to Melbourne to have the first knee reconstruction, and he had really good support from Bangladeshi community, or it might have been family as well. And then he went back the second time, he didn't have it. So here he is, this the king of Bangladesh cricket. He flew himself to Melbourne. He went and got his operation, probably paid for it himself. He took himself to the operation, and it was a day surgery. And somehow he got himself out and back to the accommodation and had to get food for himself. It was like when he was telling me this, I was like, getting like amazing resilience and determination to play for as long as he did, well into his late 30s.
Yeah, that's incredible. Definitely, he's given a lot for Bangladesh cricket. Like, I still remember when I was a young kid, and especially that famous Bangladesh win against India. I think it was in the 2007 World Cup, where he was, bowling with a lot of heat. And before then, I think people used to say that he used to bowl even 145, and he's clocked 150 back in his younger days. And then now you're
Yeah,
talking about how he sort of adjusted, and obviously, with the injuries that he's been through, then he sort of adjusted his bowling and became a lot more skillful, and prolonged his career. So definitely an inspirational figure in that sense as well. And in terms of, I guess, when it comes to the team in general, what do you feel like? Because you said something interesting earlier, where when you were a coach, you were just trying to make a happy environment. And then, as I mentioned as well previously, like there was definitely a turning point where it comes to, like, now, for example, when Bangla fans watch Bangladesh national team play, like there's that sense of belief genuinely that, okay, we can beat any team on our day, whereas before it wasn't necessarily the case. So what do you feel like you left behind that can helped Bangladesh in that trajectory towards being more of a stronger, more consistent team?
I think uh, I think a lot of the time it was just giving them belief, giving them the realization that they actually belong at international cricket. And I remember one particular series, I think I stood up and I said, unless you actually stand up for yourself, teams will just look down on you all the time. And until we actually, we walk out there man for man, and we mentally we must be there and ready to play and believe in what we're trying to do. And I think maybe that's something that I sort of got them to realize and give them confidence. I tried my best to have selections consistent and give people a period of time to be in the team, and then hopefully with a bit of success. And also with a bit of success, you get confidence. Runs is your currency, wickets is your currency, and if you're performing and the team's winning, everything's great. And you flip the flip side, the back end of my time there, we had a few narrow losses. Team lost confidence. Had a T20 World Cup. We had not a great tournament at all. And then that was the flip side. And towards the back end of my time there, 2013 was amazing. And we had really good prep and a lot of stuff too. As I said before, we played really good test matches. We had I probably pushed them a little bit in terms of their preparation and try to make sure that they prepare well, quite physically. And I probably tried to, the other thing I might have installed was not so much cracking the whip with fitness, but making them realize how important fitness is. And I think we worked really hard, the support staff, working with players one on one. So that stuff with Mashrafi Mortaza, I was doing my job. The physio was doing his job. The S&C was doing his job. We're all quite aligned as a support staff, working on each player individually and what they needed, what were their strengths, what were their weaknesses, or what do they work on, that we can actually enhance their strengths even further. So I think that's maybe one of the things that I might have left when I was there. And I think just really back the players. And I think that was one thing. It got a bit tough towards the back end of my time there. The board had formed again. There was new people involved, and it got quite difficult for me to get what I needed. I thought the team wanted, and that was probably the demise of my time there. And I decided to move on.
Yeah, fair enough, and yeah, like definitely have has left a sort of imprint on Bangladesh cricket in that sense, especially with your time there. And I'm gonna jump to the 2016, the stint that you had as a bowling coach for New Zealand, because you had some very significant and major victories. So I might touch on, for example, you made the 2019 Cricket World Cup final, and you were the bowling coach then, so I can imagine how crazy that I mean that World Cup was very interesting, even from just a New Zealand perspective. Like there were many close wins, some I think narrow losses as well in the group stages. So obviously New Zealand did really well to get to the World Cup final, but it wasn't like you're thrashing teams left, right, center in that sense. You're just getting consistent victories, maybe one or two losses here and there, but then still were consistent, got to the final. So I guess tell us the preparation that went into that World Cup. Like I guess from a bowling coach perspective, going to England and playing there might be favorable for a spinner, sorry, for a bowler in general, but then as a
Mm,
pacer in particular. But in saying that, I think that World Cup they expected big scores from the batsmen, but it didn't end up being such because
mm.
the pressure of the World Cup naturally, or maybe the skill level of the bowlers was really top notch. So yeah, give us a bit of a rundown regarding the preparation that went into, I guess, in particular the New Zealand Pacers prior to that World Cup.
Yeah, I think for me that World Cup we had some really cool analytical, some analysis stuff that we created here in New Zealand that was cool, and that sort of brought out some stats around what the batter might react to us. If you get hit for four, this is what they might do the next ball if you bowl on speed, off speed. So we had that type of stuff. I think the huge one for that World Cup was Kane Williamson. One of the things that Kane used to always say, and like that's I learned a lot from Kane. I think he was a player of the tournament, and he batted so well. And there was some range in that tournament. The weather changed, and that made the pitches a little bit more even. Thank goodness. And yeah, I think we had a lot of narrow victories. I remember the West Indies game, for example. Like we were home and hosed, and all of a sudden it got way too close, and then Trent took a great catch on the boundary. I remember Gary Stead, the coach, literally jumped on me, and I caught him, and like great memories of stuff like that. So I remember the game against South Africa. We got over the line. It's a great partnership between Kane, I think, and Colin de Granholm. I remember that. Yeah, and I think the big game for me, obviously the World Cup final, is a moment in time. That whole last stanza of that, and the game before was unbelievable in itself. That whole game, like it was rained out. We didn't. We probably wanted to score a few more runs. It was rained out. We had a good start with the ball, not a bad start, but not the greatest start either. But we started well. Came back the next day, and we had plans on how we're going to set fields to Kohli. Um, we got very clear on our meetings as a bowling group on how we want what fields we wanted to basically bowl to our strengths as a bowling unit. So what Trent, he would have strong onside fields for right-handed, for example, because he was swinging the ball back in, and he would set the field, and he would have one less fielder on the offside. So I remember against India he had a backward square, man in front of square next to the umpire, short mid wicket, mid on, deep square. So I think he had like five, and he actually never had it. I even think he brought one more over, and he didn't have a third man. So, and this is like a thing what we call as a bit of a decoy field. So he actually got Kohli out with a ball. It sort of came back, but he was actually beating him on the outside edge a lot, and he's trying to work it down to third man, and he actually set him up and brought it back into him. And I think he referred it and it was hitting the bail. Yeah, so that was a pretty amazing game, that win, and MS Dhoni was on fire, and I thought, geez, they need tens and overs, and these days tens and overs very gettable. It's two boundaries and an over. Back then, ten and overs, like if anyone could do it, Dhoni could do it, and then we got him out with a great run out. So yeah, there's a lot of things that went our way, and that's tournament cricket. That is, you'll have tournaments, and I've even had that with Wellington. this year. I feel like we've had so many injuries throughout the season. Just when we think we're at full strength, something might happen. Broken thumb that happened happened 2 days ago. But we had things go our way, so you need to have a lot of luck. But yeah, I remember going there our tournament, and then obviously the big one for me is whenever I see a game there's 15 or 4, I will never ever again think that you got the game, because that was the one moment in the World Cup final where I actually thought we might have it, we might win the World Cup. Holy heck. 7 weeks of 8 weeks nearly of dedication to this, and it came down to 15 or 4, and then the hand of God or the deflection off the bat, and then the whole game changed. And what a finish though, to a game of cricket. It just kept going and going. It was quite a late finish in the end. But yeah, it's still a game that I struggle to watch. I think I've seen it like 4 or 5 times, the highlights at best. It was funny, the next time that we went back to Lords in 2021 for a test series, it so happened 2 years later it was on the screen when we had a rain break, and it was like, oh, everyone's going, I watch that TV. And some of them was actually the first time they've seen the replay, a lot of the players. So it was a tough watch.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it was the most incredible. I mean, I've watched India versus Pakistan in the T20 World Cup at the MCG. I was
Oh
there
yeah.
at the ground. That was the most incredible game I've seen. But definitely that World Cup game was something else. It was, especially watching on TV. But regarding the semi-final victory against India, it was
Mm,
a really interesting circumstance because normally you don't play 50 overs over 2 days, right? Like you just finish on
mm.
that same day and go home. But because of the rain delay and what have you, India ended up batting on the second day. So I'm just curious, like what went, because you talked about having your plans to Virat Kohli.
Mm.
What happened that night essentially? Because it was a very different experience. You probably didn't expect it, and then obviously there's a reserve day to play the rest of the match. So, and I know the condition also changed as well significantly. So it was just kind of a very interesting game that panned out. So I guess when day one happened, and what sort of strategies did you discuss with the bowlers in coming to the next day? Because since the conditions changed, I suspect that maybe the plans that you had initially might have changed when you got to the field, for example.
Mm.
So were there any big adjustments in that sense?
Oh, I remember the next day we got back there because it had been raining the day before. It felt like it was quite humid in Manchester, so you sort of already got the feeling straight away that there was going to be almost like you get 2 bites of the cherry. So I think we might have bowled, I don't know how many overs, I can't remember now. It was long a while ago back, but we might have bowled like 8 overs, 10 overs maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it was even that many, but you almost got a preview to the next day of how things were going to pan out in terms of what to bowl, where to bowl, the conditions, and then the next day the ball was certainly doing a lot, and it was amazing. It was just like one ball at a time, one ball at a time, and I think the day before there was a huge crowd. Oh, the crowd was packed, and definitely a few Kiwis, but not many. And it was a sea of blue. The next day, though, people must have had work on or something, and there wasn't as many. So it was a lot calmer. And our boys bowled just beautifully and bowled in partnerships. And I think that's what was throughout that whole tournament. I mean, we played the same team most games. It was Trent Bolt, Matt Henry, Lockie Ferguson, like pretty much the same team most games, I think, and they bowled well, and they just got confidence as the tournament went on.
And regarding the World Cup final, I guess in the lead up to that, I assume the nerves and the adrenaline was sky high even in the lead up to that particular game. So, what was the vibe like in the change room, and what sort of things did you do with the bowls in preparation for that World Cup? And I know you talked about planning and all that, and you were up against the likes of Roy and Bairstow in that World Cup were they were in such good form as well. So they were very dangerous opening pairs. So what was the strategies like against such quality batsmen?
Yeah, well, I think the numbers going into the game, Lords back then, if you batted first, you had a pretty solid chance of winning. I don't know why, but that's just the way that the pitch at Lords was. So we batted first. Um, on the day, it was an interesting thing that happened on the day. How can you believe this? Like, it had been raining, and we were actually running late to the game because then the clouds came out, and then I always got to the game early, and next minute we got there, and it was probably a good blessing in disguise in a way because we actually had no time to think. The rain stopped. It stopped raining, and then they said we're pretty much only running 15 minutes late. So next minute we were rushing around and trying to get things set up, and but it was fine. It was probably a blessing, as I said, a blessing in disguise, to not be too much in the moment before the moment happened and waste energy. I think Lords is such a ground around the conditions, atmospheric. Like if it's cloudy, it's amazing how the ball will start doing something. The pitch itself, the lean of the field, um, and it was just one of those situations. You just yeah, we got our plans again. We set our plans, but it was all about like each ball was an event. And I just remember like Colin de Granholm, we like I felt Jason Roy. We were pretty unlucky not to get him out in the first over. I think it might have been clipping the top of leg, and the rules back then on DRS, we may not have got enough ball on the stumps. Um, yeah, and then the spell that probably changed the game. And I was walking around the field, so my job when we were bowling, I'd go up in the stands and talk to the coach and then relay some messages sometimes. But my job was to walk around, water, and just talk to the bowlers, talk to them about plans. Some of them would just want to get stuff off their chest, might be frustration. Some of them may not want to talk much, so it's all just being there for them and knowing that you're there. And it was amazing. Like Colin de Granholm's spell completely changed the game. I think he got Joe Root out. I remember there was a real weird feeling around the ground because all of a sudden I think we got 241. Yeah, 241. Or scores were level, weren't they? And 241, and they were only going at just above threes. They got off to a bit of a good start, and then all of a sudden Colin de Granholm brought them back, and it was amazing. I was walking around the ground, dodging some abuse sometimes. But then there was the one Kiwi contingent. The New Zealanders were in one corner of the ground. So when you look out of the pavilion, they were in this corner. Couldn't be any further away, to be honest. And then all of a sudden, and everyone, Lords is amazing. It's a real spectacle because you sit up high in the viewing room and you're literally at the top of the stands and it's all the same. And you can hear the the hums of everyone talking, and then you watch cricket. So then you went ground level, and then I came up, go down, come up, and then the humming was like just stopped, It was like so you could hear a pin drop nearly, maybe not a pin drop, but like it was so quiet. And then after every ball of Colin de Granholm, he bowled a dot and another dot and another dot, and all the Kiwis in the crowd would be clapping every dot ball. It was unbelievable. Even now, I'm starting to get I've got goosebumps on the legs remembering it because it was like it just takes me back. Every dot ball, another one, and all of a sudden there's pressure. It was just pure pressure building up, and yeah, and by then we were obviously very confident. We knew England were a tough team to beat. Had some serious cricketers. But even when I look back now and I go, some of the bowling at the end and the fielding by us to even make it a super over after they, it was, I think they needed 3 off 2 and they only got 2, they tried to get 2 twos in a row to win the game and they missed out. And the throws from, I think one was Satner, the other one was Neesham, and even Trent's retrieval hit the stump, like so calm under serious pressure. To keep us in the game and go to a super over. And that's, little things like that. You sort of look back now and you go, it was some seriously good cricket. It was a good catch by Tim Southey, who wasn't playing that game. Came in, I think got Butler out, who came out and was batting on another pitch. That guy, when he gets going, I mean, Stokes did some cool stuff, but he nearly got out a few times. But Joss Butler, he came out and he just started hitting the ball in the gaps hard and running hard, and he was amazing. And like getting his wicket was crucial. But yeah, it was an amazing game of cricket. Two good teams going at it, and it's still a tie today.
Incredible insights regarding, in particular, what struck a chord with me is your description of Colin de Granholm's over and the crowd and what they were like, because that reminds me when I was at the ground, I mentioned I was at the ground during the India-Pakistan game at the MCG, one of the best games, oh, definitely the best game I've seen live. Obviously, when you're watching on TV, a lot of things you can't really tell, happens on the ground. And one of the things when I was there happened was that because I guess the momentum was, all in Pakistan's favor, even through the batting innings, the way they recovered. And then towards the
Yeah,
beginning, it was like a big collapse. India's batting collapsed quite, drastically at the beginning of their batting innings. And when Kohli and I think it was Pandya were kind of getting a roll on, there was this kind of turning point. You just felt, I forgot, I think it was in the 12th or 13th over, and then suddenly like the crowd just kind of became alive to the point where the whole crowd is just cheering Kohli, and you have 100,000 people, like
oh,
literally Indian fans
phenomenal.
screaming at the top of their lungs. Like it was like a spiritual experience. I can't explain it. Like it was like incredible. I'm like, wow, like something's happening. And before you know it, he hit that six over Harris Ralph's head. Like that, it was just like incredible. And I guess things like that you don't realize when you're watching on TV. But me being there at the ground, like I knew what the build up was like till that moment happened, and that's like one of the most viewed probably shots you can see on cricket highlights at the moment. But just that moment that went into that before that happened, you just like it's just a different experience. It's like back to what you're saying about that adrenaline, the crowd experience when you're playing at the top level. It's just different altogether as opposed to obviously playing club cricket, and that's what makes cricket such an amazing game. So yeah, it just kind of reminded me of that moment. I can't forget it. Sometimes I think about it. I'm just like, it's just something you can't really like. It's not normal. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's just something like crazy experience. So I don't know if you had something similar like those kind of experiences in, other games. Like, or is it something that you feel like only comes about in these like huge big games? When there's a packed crowd, you just have this atmosphere, have this experience. It's this surreal feeling that kind of permeates through the atmosphere at the moment. I don't know. I can't explain it. So
oh
yeah,
no, well, that game that you're talking about in Melbourne, I mean, that was probably you look back at that T20 World Cup, that would have been the innings of the tournament under huge pressure, huge crowd. Well, we were actually in Melbourne that night, going out for dinner because we were playing Afghanistan a couple of days later. So we were already there preparing for that match, and you could hear the crowd. And we're where we were staying. We were close, but we weren't that close, and it was huge. Like how loud it was, phenomenal. Games that I've had like that, well, obviously that T20 World Cup final, New Zealand, very privileged role I had. We had the 2020 2021 T20 World Cup final during COVID times. The crowd against Pakistan in the semi-final in Sydney, we were certainly up against it. We were playing. We may as well have been playing in Pakistan, and everyone it was a sea of green. And the World Cup semi-final of 2023 in Mumbai, that was an extremely loud crowd. That was quite intimidating at times. Met David Beckham that day, I think, briefly. He came out in the field. That was pretty cool at halftime. But I remember, yeah, vividly for me, a huge point for us was the test matches against Australia, and Australia are amazing. The Boxing Day test, I featured in that, and that was, well, I didn't feature, but yeah, that was huge. Like, yeah, similar like what you're saying, decent crowd. But I think for me, like the one that was huge for us, being with the New Zealand team, was the World Test Championship final. I think it was 2/3 of the ground was full, but that was high pressure, high octane, a 6-day game. First game got rained out. Yeah, and we just bowled. Everything just came together. We actually struggled on the first day. I think India might have been 100 for one. And I used to have these treats that my wife would bake and give to the guys at tea time during the test match. It was chocolate, but it was like a cake. It was yeah, it's a slice, and it was almost we'd have like a tea party and we'd sort of try and get around the guys, get the vibes back a bit positive again. I remember one of the boys came in and goes with a swear word, Jurgo, will you blah 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 get the slice out, will you? We need something here. And they were 100 for one, and I think that was after day one, and I think day one was sort of cut short again, but after that we bowled beautifully throughout the rest of that game and took regular wickets. And yeah, I remember vivid points in that game. I remember talking to Neil Wagner when he got out. I was down the sideline with him, talking to him about tactics, and he got Jadeja out around the wicket. Yeah, I remember talking to Kyle Jamieson. He got out Virat Kohli out twice in that game, I think. We were talking tactics. Yeah, just things just seemed to happen. Whatever we spoke about, decoy fields, like setting up the batter around the corner and you actually bowl just a normal ball. He might be thinking you're coming in here and you're just changing it. So we had little plans like that we would make for certain batters that we felt were, if they get too comfortable outside off stump, we might put that leg gully, just get them thinking we're going to go there. But it's, as I said, the exact same ball, trying to challenge both sides of the bat as much as we can to bring in as many modes of dismissal as we can. And it just seemed to work.
Yeah, it's amazing. Definitely, especially for New Zealand at that time, I was the inaugural World Test Championship. So winning that, how was that experience afterwards? I know there was like a little parade happening and all that kind of stuff. So it was a big deal, especially in the cricketing world.
Oh, I think yeah, first time doing it. We actually, when we first went to England, we played England in a Test series before that, and we got a lot of confidence for that because that was the first Test series win for quite a while, if not maybe the first one in England. I can't quite remember the exact record that we set, but that gave us some confidence leading in that game. Leading into that Test series, we actually had a training camp at the ground we were going to play the World Test Championship final on. So that certainly helped. And it was interesting when we came back. It was like a county ground. It was not really set up. But then when we came back and the bus arrived and it had all the signage up, World Test Championship, it was like completely different vibes. And you just sort of felt, holy heck, like we're here, a one-off game. This is the final. This is not a tournament. This is like one game. Let's go. And yeah, you literally rock up. And we had a lot of different types of things happen leading into that as well. We had players coming out of COVID. They had to leave IPL early. They were somewhere in what's it called? Near like the islands near Sri Lanka. I can't remember. I should know. And then you had different people in different parts of the world, and phenomenal effort to bring it all together. But I think for me, it was I remember when we were batting to reach 130, and we basically we were not allowed to move where we were sitting. And Trent Bolt was like, "Oi, sit back down," and then everyone sit back down, and then everyone's like, you get nervous, so you sort of run to the bathroom, and then you're nervous and you run back. You had to be back by the time the next over was bowled, and just stuff like that. And it wasn't until we literally needed 10 to win that people started to relax. And I've got some amazing photos that I took on my iPad of all the fast bowlers realizing that they're not needing to bat. We're about to win. And there's a lot of Tim Southey like that. And then, Colin de Grandhomme, fist being pumped. And that was pretty cool. Pretty cool moment, literally just the finish. And there was a really strong, a lot of people that we knew. There's a lot of New Zealanders that live in England. So there was a whole pile of tickets for them and they were there as well. So there was a lot of embracement. And, that was a real golden period, that 2019 World Cup. And then 2 years later, the core team was pretty similar team. Besides a couple of players that just played white ball formats, there was a lot of players that were involved in that 2019 World Cup. So maybe that had a roll-on effect to when we had a big match 2 years later, that we knew that we'd had the time in the saddle to back our skills and do our best.
Yeah, amazing. And yeah, thank you for sharing all these insights. Obviously, you speaking about your experience in those games, like we don't get those insights as as the viewers or watchers of that game, especially when it was happening live. So these are definitely interesting tidbits for the listeners to take on board as well. And I know you've been so generous with your time. I'll ask like maybe two quick questions before we wrap
Yeah.
up the show. And one thing I wanted to ask is that when you were actually in your playing days, you played for Queensland Academy of Sport. You played against a New South Wales second 11 squad. And I was actually looking at the scorecard. It's very interesting. And had the likes of Usman Khawaja, had the likes of David Warner and Steve Smith. And I just double checked to see if I was accurate. But at that time, I think it was 2006 from memory, that game, Steve Smith would have been about 16 years of age. So do you recall playing against a 16-year-old Steve Smith?
No, I think I sort of do. I thought it's, yeah, sort of that, that quirky way he sort of runs around. He's obviously a good athlete, but he sort of runs in a certain way. I reckon I remember seeing that. I think he was batting at number 8 and he was a leg spinner. I think he was playing as a leg spinner. I'd have to look at the scorecard, but I do remember facing Jason Krager. I think he played and he was bowling offies. And I remember the fizz of the ball coming down when I was playing. It's like, wow, I've never heard that before. And yeah, it's interesting. Usman Khawaja. Did I get any wickets?
I'll quickly check
I
now.
don't
I
reckon I
think
did. I think I might have had a quiet game.
no, you got 3 wickets.
Oh,
So
good.
I think who'd you get up? You got Daniel Smith, Grant Lambert out, and also Scott Coit. So I
Uh,
think that was in the second innings, and I think
yeah.
what happened later. Yeah, so got some wickets. So that's not too bad.
Yeah, I do remember playing that game, and yeah, Steve Smith. Wow, what a career he has! What an amazing batter! Wow. Every time we used to get him out with New Zealand, like remember we had a good series against him in that Test series. We kept Neil Wagner sort of kept getting him out with his sort of short ball plan, and yeah, that was. But to get him out at any stage, serious batsman, like yeah, obviously one of the best of all time.
Speaking of which, you're also on that topic. It was in my notes, but I didn't want to prolong the podcast too much. But since you brought it up, that was actually a big talking point at that point in time, particularly with Steve Smith, where Neil Wagner was bowling those short balls at his ball. I mean, Neil Wagner was known to be doing that throughout his time anyway, and he was known as that spearhead. And naturally, it's very difficult to play it. But I guess in particular, because Steve Smith's such a established cricketer at that particular series, he wasn't playing it the best way he would normally play all the other bowlers. So I suspect that was part of the plan going into that series. So tell us a bit more about that and how you utilized Wagner's kind of short ball method.
Mm.
Because I would say even as an orthodox bowler, like, people sort of pigeonhole him as like, a short ball specialist, but, he gets the ball to swing beautifully when he pitches it up. Obviously, we use tactically when it comes to short ball. So yeah, like what was the plans in particular keeping Steve Smith quiet in that series?
Well, I think initially, yes, Neil in his own right, he was always behind, in not so much behind as a bowler, but he would come in behind Tim and Trent and Matt Henry and Kyle Jamieson later on. But so he was always wanting, like, he had a strong desire to prove himself to, I can actually just bowl normal. I don't have to bowl the pushing the batter back plan. And he certainly at times did that really well. Like Neil, again, like I mentioned before, particularly later in his career, when he had a lot of control, around, like he would challenge both sides of the bat. And that was the challenge for any batter against Neil. He would sort of bring a few back, and then all of a sudden he had a beautiful 3/4 ball that would go across the right hander, and all of a sudden he's bringing, as I said, both edges into play. Very skillful. And I think for Neil, like, yeah, one of his strengths is he actually isn't overly tall. And when he bowled the short ball, the trajectory of the ball off the pitch sometimes would jump, because he's actually quite strong because he had like a long levered action. So when you got a long levered action like he does, your core needs to be able to control the long levers. So when everything snapped really well, it would fly through. And then if it didn't quite click, it would actually, for some reason, just like it'd be around sort of this height, a bouncer. So, that variance of bounce would bring different angles of the bat into play. And I think that particular series, it was just like a matchup that worked really well. And Neil, yeah, bowled quite nicely with his sort of bumper plan. And again, it wasn't overly quick. Like it's different facing it compared to when you see it on TV. Like I think it was coming out somewhere between 135 to 128 kilometers an hour sometimes, depending on because he bowled so many overs. But again, it was the brute force and the strength of Neil Wagner. The ball actually hits the wicket hard. So there's a term that we use in maybe professional levels was like a heavy ball. And yeah, I had that happen to me once when I was like sort of different story again. Once I caught balls with my baseball mitt to Ben Stokes, and it was in the warm up against England in a one-dayer in Dunedin. Both teams had to use the one warm-up pitch and share it. So I knew the bowling coach for England really well. So I said, "You take that end, I'll take this end if you don't care." And we didn't. We got on well, so both teams get on really well. And then I remember Ben Stokes. He sort of just trotted in and does his like bang and it was like boom. I went, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." And then boom, happened again, and the ball just had a weight behind it. It was almost like a shot put hitting your glove compared to other guys that might sort of bowl what you call long it but shape the ball. But that's what his unique skill in a different style of bowler or right-hand bowler. Ben Stokes, when he gets the ball in the hand, he makes things happen. He can swing it both ways a bit. He hits the wicket hard. He gets extra bounce, and he comes on. He takes wickets because it's a little bit unpredictable about what's going to happen because he bowls the ball so heavy, and he's strong. And that's Neil Wagner. He was strong. He bowled a heavy ball, and sometimes it would bounce more than others. And that was in that series. Like I remember there was a top edge down the short fine leg, and there was one that was high. And then I remember there was one game in Sydney in the last test. It was like literally just took off, and it wasn't even a bumper plan. It was just a bumper. And I remember, and it was a good catch to gully. I think Henry Niggles took the good catch. So it was just one of those series where it was a really good matchup.
Yeah, amazing. You've shared so many incredible insights about your experience, your playing days, and also your time as coach. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm asked two quick questions. So in terms of as a coach, I guess people hear about big names like you've worked with Kane Williamson, Trent Bolt, etc. But pick maybe one bowler, one batsman who you feel has impressed you the most, and isn't necessarily like a big name, like the likes of Steve Smith or Kane Williamson.
I think someone who's had to work really hard to get to where he is now is Matt Henry. So Matt Henry opens the bowling for New Zealand now. He's 32, 33. He has spent a lot of time on the sideline. So him and I worked a lot together in the late, like either side of 2020, and he was waiting for his time to come through, and we would work hard, and we would have sessions where we would only bowl 3 overs or 2 overs, and he would bowl as fast as he could. And then he would have sessions where he'd be working on his Yorker. So to see him come through and doing so well, he's done well for Somerset in the T20 Blast, and then getting those T20 opportunities because he was more of a longer version format. So to see him come through, that's really, really good. Another player that's extremely talented over the years is the wicketkeeper batsman for New Zealand, and Tom Blundell, and he plays for me in Wellington. He's a very quiet character. You won't hear much from him. He's not a typical keeper behind the stumps, giving the batter a little bit of, but like seriously talented cricketer that's probably should have played more white ball for New Zealand, but there's a lot of good players around, so he missed out there. But he plays really good white ball cricket now. But yeah, serious batsman and integral part for the New Zealand team for a while now in Test cricket.
Oh yeah, incredible! And I remember Blundell from that series in Australia. I think he made that 70 odd. I think he was opening and batting, if I recall. So yeah, that was it was an incredible innings. And I think in Australia, like Australians, you would know it's almost like, until you've done it on our shores, then you're a worthy cricketer.
Oh yeah,
So,
exactly.
that's why Australians like really respect Blundell, Tom Blundell as well, and many other
Yeah.
cricketers as well. So, but yeah, no, thank you so much for your time. Shared so many gems, and I don't know if you had any sort of final thoughts from your end before we wrap up the show.
No, not really. I think for me though, I think what's really important. I coached in I think it was 280, 290 games. I coached for New Zealand over a 10-year period. Then I coached, I don't know, maybe another 100 games with Bangladesh. And I think the one thing that really, I think for everyone to always remember is that when I finished with the Black Caps, they read out some stats about my time with the Black Caps. And basically, over the 280 odd games or 90 games that I was involved with the Black Caps coaching them, um, overall we won. It was somewhere between 52 and 56% of our games, and which is cool. But I think it's something for everyone to remember in cricket. Is in cricket you got 11 humans against 11 humans. Some will have a good day, some will have a shocker, some will make small contributions that can win the game. But I think what you always remember is that the more tournaments and I go to and the more franchise opportunities and stuff like that, like you literally can make the finals winning 50% of your games. And my whole point being, as a cricketer, you need to be extremely patient and learn about the process and discover what your strengths are, and in a lot of ways stick to them. And this is what I've learned over the years. You stick to your strengths, you keep little things you work on to enhance your strengths, and just be really patient. It's a real mental battle. You as I said, you'll win a little bit more than 50% of your games. You might win a little bit less, and with that in mind, it's a real mind battle. So if you can stick to the process and look to the future and have a really long term vision rather than next week, next month, next half of the season, and think about where you want to be in 3 or 4 years' time, then if your focus is on that, it's amazing what you can achieve and probably beyond your wildest dreams.
Yeah, that's great perspective as well. Just to focus on the process, because if we fixate too much on the outcome, you're gonna be sad most of the time, right? Like winning only 50% of your games doesn't sound that great, but as you said, like
Not that fun, is
definitely
it?
can be you can still like the team can still make the finals. So it's all about the process. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, and we'll definitely a lot of great gems. So I'll definitely clip them up and share them around on our socials as well. So for the audience, they can check us our previous episodes on YouTube or on Spotify, on Apple iTunes as well. We have a social media on TikTok, on Instagram, and so also I'll put the show notes. I'll put Shane's bio and links to other stuff and all that kind of things in the show notes. So from our special guest Shane Jurgensen, wish you all the best. This is Tanzam signing off. Thank you very much.